So, after all the victory parades and the celebrations for the American Revolution died down, that's when the real test began. The United States wasn't born strong and united, not at all. It was this incredibly fragile experiment. And that experiment was about to face its first and maybe its biggest challenge, just plain survival.
And the verdict? Well, it came in pretty quick. The experiment was failing. And I'm not exaggerating here. That was the reality on the ground. The first blueprint for the United States government just flat out wasn't working. The whole dream of a new republic was on the verge of collapsing almost as soon as it got started.
So what was the problem? It was this document, the Articles of Confederation. Now, to get why it was so weak, you have to remember what these folks had just fought against: a powerful king, an ocean away. So the absolute last thing these new states wanted was another strong central government bossing them around. They designed the Articles to be more like a friendly club, an alliance where each state was basically its own little independent country, just looking out for itself. There was no real power to actually unite them.
And guess who were the first people to start sounding the alarm? The very same people who led the revolution. They could see the cracks forming in their brand new nation, and believe me, they were not quiet about it. Their warnings paint a really stark picture of a country in deep, deep trouble. George Washington, of all people, really captured this feeling of anxiety with this one powerful and frankly pretty scary statement. He saw a nation that was just teetering on the edge with absolutely no stability.
What Washington was afraid of is crystal clear, right? One nation, that's the dream. That means unity, strength. But the reality under the Articles was 13 tomorrow. And that's just a recipe for division, chaos, and total instability. I mean, you just can't build a future on ground that's shaky. No way.
Then you had James Madison, the guy who would eventually be known as the father of the Constitution. He did not mince words. His diagnosis of the problem was direct and right to the point. The issue wasn't that complicated. The solution meant they had to completely change how they were thinking. This loose alliance had to become a real, stronger union.
And to complete this trio of warnings, here comes Alexander Hamilton. Always the pragmatist. His take was blunt: the present system is defective. He saw it like a broken machine, one that was completely incapable of doing its most basic jobs. So the main point here is that the nation's most brilliant minds were all looking at the same thing and saying, this is broken and we have to fix it like yesterday. When you have dire warnings coming from leaders like Washington, Madison, and Hamilton, you can't just ignore them. The calls for change grew from a whisper into a roar. The feeling was clear. If they stayed on this path, they were headed for total disaster.
And this wasn't some kind of prediction, okay? This was a proven fact. The day-to-day reality had shown everybody that the government created by the Articles of Confederation was just too weak to survive the challenges it was facing. It just wasn't up to the task.
The pressure had built up to a breaking point. All the arguments had been made. All the weaknesses were out in the open. The nation was standing at a crossroads, and it was becoming pretty obvious which path it had to take. Change wasn't just an option anymore. It was inevitable.
And that, of course, leads us to the final critical question. Everybody agreed the house was falling down. But how do you rebuild it while you're still living inside? Tearing down the Articles of Confederation, that was one thing. But agreeing on what should replace it, well, that was going to be the next great battle for the very soul of the nation.